Hare Krishna devotees, Dandavat Pranam. Welcome to Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Today, being Wednesday, we will be actually playing Srila Prabhupada glorification. So, the last 3 weeks, we have been playing the great, wonderful qualities of Vaishnava qualities of Srila Prabhupada from the eyes of his disciple. So, today, the disciples will be sharing three Vaishnava qualities that they actually see in Prabhupada's life. So first one is always clean, is always steady, and is faultless, or no one can find fault with Srila Prabhupada. So I'll be playing the YouTube video now. Kindly be with me. Is the audio clear, devotees? Prabhuji and Mataji? Venkatramana Prabhu, Shweta Mataji, audio is clear?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay,
It's audible.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, it's not audible.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, we cannot hear anything, Prabhu.
Making a very difficult.
Sorry, Mataji?
We could not hear. Only now it's little voice is coming, Prabhu. We could not hear anything from the beginning.
Oh, is it always for others? I just checked.
Yes. Yes, Prabhuji. We were also not able to hear.
Not able to hear anything?
Yes,
Yeah.
Prabhu. Can you play from the beginning, Prabhu?
Yeah, sure, Mataji. Is it okay, Mataji? You are able to hear?
Yes.
Prabhuji.
The audio is very loud here. So, okay, Mataji, I'll continue to play.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Again, it is not audible to me.
Same here, Prabhu.
Really, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji.
Again,
Again,
it's not audible.
No, it's a very sound loud here. I'll stop and start the sharing one more time, Mataji. Okay.
One of the qualities of a devotee is that they're clean.
Okay, Mataji, now?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
And Prabhupada was a super clean person. Actually, probably the cleanest person I've ever met. When he came to Hawaii after we moved to the new temple on Koala Way, they'd set up a beautiful room for Srila Prabhupada that's still there. And they asked me to make cushions. And they gave me this very dark blue fabric. So I stayed up like all night and I made these cushions and the bolsters for the side. And the next day he sent it back to me that he wanted white fabric. He said if it's dark, you can't see that it's dirty, and he wanted to be able to wash it when it got at the least bit dirty. And then also in Deva Sadan Mandir in Detroit, when Prabhupada, we first moved into the temple, Prabhupada came, it was the Fisher Mansion, and Prabhupada came, and they had put these beautiful carpets out, and they'd fixed the room up really nice. The next day, he said he wanted white sheets put over the carpets because that way you can see the dirt and you can take off the cover and wash it and put it back down. This is very, not fanatical, but just extremely clean. Such a good example for us.
First day that I assisted Srila Prabhupada in the kitchen was for my sister's wedding in New York. And Srila Prabhupada cooked in a very small galley kitchen in his New York apartment. Both sides counters, and he gave me the singular task of making a very difficult preparation called aloo kachori, which is still my Waterloo, because it's one of the most complex pastries to cook properly. It has to cook for a long time without becoming greasy. And that's almost impossible. It's like the elephant through the eye of a needle at the best of circumstances. But because the stuffing for this is mashed potatoes, it is even more difficult. If it's a pea kachori that can blow up like a stuffed puri, then it's easy. This is very difficult. So for nearly 8 hours, I was given that singular task of making aloo kachoris, while Srila Prabhupada cooked a 14-course feast for the wedding single-handedly in his kitchen. And in the course of cooking that feast, I made so many mistakes from the very first day in his service. The first mistake I made was I had a very short skirt on and little t-shirt and sitting cross-legged, and I said, Swamiji, may I have a cigarette? And he popped his head out the corner and he said, go wash your hands. So I went and washed my hands. And so then he explained the 4 principles in Krishna consciousness. 4 prohibitions, and no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex life, no intoxication. So then short time later, I said, Swamiji, may I have a glass of water? And he said, go wash your hands. So then he explained the first and simple, foremost principle in cooking is to engage the senses in the service of the Lord, to cook for Krishna with love and devotion, and not think about our senses, our tongue, our sense of smell, the belly. This is cooking for Krishna. So then short time later I said, Swamiji, it's very hot in here. I was wiping perspiration. Go wash your hands. So then he began a little bit, the simplest principles, rudimentary principles of external cleanliness. And then he explained just the simplest touch of internal cleanliness. By balancing both of them, are we able to engage in the idea of serving Krishna through this art of cooking. So all three things, first day in the kitchen.
At the second initiation, here's the other initiation story. It was time, this would be about a year later, about 12 months or so later. Again, we're in Berry Place, and again Prabhupada is awarding second initiation to some of the devotees, and I was included in the group. As it was, we weren't expecting the initiations to come until later in the day. So I'd been doing some service, and I was running around the temple, not necessarily prepared, but somehow something had happened and Prabhupada's schedule changed, and he had to leave to go on some preaching, to visit some life member or to go away. So the initiation was brought forward by about half a day, and someone came and said, Kishore, it's time, you have to go now to get your initiation. But I said, but I'm not ready, I haven't prepared, I think I had time quickly to have a quick shower, or maybe even just splash my face, and I don't even think I had time for a shower. So I did my best, put on a fresh dhoti and rushed up the stairs, and almost immediately I was ushered into Prabhupada's room, upstairs. Put some tilak on quickly. And the room was semi-dark. And Prabhupada's servant was massaging, I forget, it might have been Aravinda, possibly Aravinda. I don't know if it was Shrutakirti, but I think it was Aravinda at the time, can't remember. But it was just Prabhupada in his gamsha with this radiance coming off his body. You can see the oil and the radiance. So I was ushered into the room, and Prabhupada was at the other end of the room, the other side of the room. And I stepped inside, and Prabhupada immediately looked in my direction and he said, "You have bathed today?" I'd barely even come into the room. And I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." I didn't want to go through the whole explanation or whatever. It would have just sounded so... I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." And he looked at me and said, "There is odor coming." And I thought, I've blown it. I'll have to wait till some other Prabhupada's going to kick me out. There's odor coming. And he was way at the other end of the room. And he looked at me and said, "Come." And I sat down. And he said softly, "Brahman means clean. Brahman must bathe 3 times daily." And then rather than say that, he said, "Come." And then he proceeded to give me Brahman initiation. I was astonished. How is it possible for him to, I just walked in. So that was my lesson, that if I want to be Brahman, then you be clean.
My first, I would say, personal experience with Prabhupada, besides getting a cookie from him or him patting me on the head, was when I was 4 years old. I was, at the time, dressing as a sannyasi and had my danda, and we all met Srila Prabhupada at the airport, and I was in we were all in the kirtan, I was in it, and then at the end of it all, I got to ride back to the temple in the Cadillac with Srila Prabhupada. So there was the driver in the front seat, my father was in the passenger seat doing security, and Prabhupada was here and I was in the back seat. I danda, and Prabhupada was there, and I was just like, literally this was the best day of my life. And so we're on our way back from the airport, and Srila Prabhupada takes out this big cookie that someone had given him. And he could see that I was obviously interested in the cookie. So he broke it in half and gave it to me. And I just ate it down real quick, just buried the thing. I was, super excited. And then I'm sitting there, and Prabhupada is just barely got into his. I think he was talking to, Hari Sari or somebody, whoever's in the front seat, the driver. He was talking to the driver, and didn't eat his right away. So I'm sitting there with mine finished, and Prabhupada still has his thing, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a Brahmin. I'm supposed to wash my hands. And Prabhupada's sitting right next to me, and he's going to see that I don't wash my hands after I eat. And I'm 4 years old. This is the biggest problem that I could ever have. And I just remember, my danda sitting next to the door, and I'm just like, I'm touching it. I'm thinking about what's going to happen. Am I going to be exposed as a smarta Brahmin or a false Brahmin? So I keep cool, though. I watch Prabhupada and see what he does. And Prabhupada eats his cookie, and without touching his fingers to his lips. So he eats his cookie, and when he's finished, he goes. I look over and I say, and the time it was just such a relief. You know what I mean? There were all these pressures on me, I'm a Brahmin, I gotta wash my hands, or maybe, take a shower even, take a bath, this is some pretty intense pressure. And Prabhupada went, and instantly my suffering vanished, the suffering that was in my mind, disappeared. And this event has meant more and more to me over the years as the time has passed, and I've had different realization and experiences, and I've come to take it as that meaning time, place, and circumstance.
Another time at the same time, deities were there. It was either Radha Damodar or another almost identical set to Radha Damodar that we had acquired there. They were the medium, about this high, the multi-metal kind, really beautiful deities that we were worshiping there. And we were taking care of the deity worship. And the floor was wooden, and Prabhupada didn't think it was properly clean, and he'd mentioned it, and then when he saw it, he didn't think it was clean enough again. I remember Kaushalya had volunteered to clean the floor in the temple room. Prabhupada said, well, okay, this is how you do it. You're not doing it properly. Do it like this. And Prabhupada pulled his dhoti up and got down on his hands and knees. And he had a pot of water, right, and another pot. He said, get 2 pots, right? One for dirty water, one for clean water. And he took a rag, and he put it in one pot of water. He got down, he scrubbed the floor, right? Then he went to the other pot and he wringed it. Then he wringed it out into that, and then he rinsed it, and then he put it in fresh water and put it back down, wring it out, and then went back down and mopped up what he'd done. He said, in this way you will keep one that is clean and one that gets dirtier, and always rinse the rag and then soak up the dirt. That way you'll pick up the dirt rather than just moving it around. But he spent like 2 or 3 minutes down on his hands and knees scrubbing the floor in front of the deities. I remember that was a nice thing to see him do. He didn't hesitate to do it at all. He got right down and showed Kaushalya exactly how he wanted it done.
On one trip from Delhi, Prabhupada was headed to, he usually traveled west. But from Delhi we went to Bangkok, which is almost 10 hours, and then he was going to have another 10-hour flight. So we get to the airport, we're sitting in a transit lounge, and we were changing airlines, everything. We had to go through customs, immigration. After flying 10 hours, maybe Prabhupada, I'm not sure what his health was at that situation, but when we were sitting down in transit, he said to me, I need to take bath. He said, I have to refresh. He said, I feel I need to refresh. It was like a feeling, he said. He said, can you get my things? And the suitcases were right over there because they were getting transferred through customs. So I opened up his suitcase and get everything, which meant I had to get a gamsha, I had to get a towel, his lota. There's no showers. He wanted to bathe. Like we're walking into a shower, walking into a bathroom that's the size of a factory, big 20 sinks, toilets, urinals, people in and out constantly. And so I get everything and we go in. So I'm waiting for him, of course. I don't know how we're going to do this. And he said, okay. He said, we'll go by the sink. He said, you fill. So he tells me, Prabhupada tells you what to do. So we're in a very public men's room in the airport. And I'm literally like bathing. It's like an Abhishek ceremony going on. Prabhupada's squatting and I'm bathing him. Just, he's soaping. And people are walking in, passing urine, going to toilets, washing their hands, and there's an attendant there. He's not doing anything, but he's there, he's visibly unhappy, let's say. His water's splashing all over the floor. And Prabhupada, it's like we were in his room, he's literally, Prabhupada was on such a different level than everyone else. Sometimes you noticed it, I always say traveling with him was the most fun because he was just so aloof from everyone. He always just did things the way he wanted. And if someone said things, his tendency was he didn't hear even. He didn't understand English, he didn't hear, whatever it was, he'd just go on his way. He didn't care. He didn't have anyone to impress or feel shame from. Nothing. He had no desires other than to serve. And this was part of it. He said, I have to refresh. So we go do everything. It was wonderful in a sense, here we are. And I got the it's the only time I did a Abhishek to him when I was with him as his servant. It was pretty special. And then I help him, dress, puts on his dhoti kurta, and we head out. So of course as we're heading out, this attendant's at the door, and I don't know what he's saying in his Thai language, he's just going off, And again, Prabhupada, obviously he heard him, but he's just walking out. So I'm walking behind Prabhupada. And when I was with Prabhupada, of course, I did not at all have that aloof mentality that he had. Sometimes I would become, I just wanted to hide, I hate to admit it, I was a rascal, I didn't see things the way he did. I was always concerned what others were thinking. So I'm following behind, and as we get out, I said, Prabhupada, this guy's really ticked off, and he said, yes, I know. He said, I had to bathe, and that was it. He knew what he had to do, and he did it. And that's the way Prabhupada was. If something needed to be done, he just did it. There was nothing to interfere with it. So even we were in the most public place ever, for him it was just did what he did.
When Prabhupada got his stroke, it was Memorial Day weekend, and Memorial Day weekend in New York, everyone leaves New York City. It's like this huge exodus. And I could see Prabhupada couldn't function, it was serious. So I called my family doctor, but he was out of town. And, you just get the answering service. I asked other devotees, anyone know any doctor? And nobody knew. And I was calling. I just took the phone book. I started making random calls. Whomever I called, everyone was out of town for the weekend. Everybody goes. At least in those days, I don't know now. And I'm just calling and calling, and it's hard enough to get anyone to come to a residence anyway. And I actually could not get any doctor. And, you know, it was either bringing Prabhupada to a hospital. I didn't want to do that. And ultimately, I just got some kind of doctor's referral service, municipal thing. And eventually, I was able to get through them some doctor. And finally, a doctor came. And he was this little old, I guess maybe Jewish guy. And he comes in. Of course, we didn't ask him to take his shoes off, but I mean, there we're all standing in our kind of. We used to wear these jeans and t-shirts and barefoot, and you know. And he walks in. You know, there's no furniture, and just a carpet, and there's this old Indian man. You know, he couldn't figure what's going on here. And there's Prabhupada very sick, and everyone's walking on Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You know, I mean, he just couldn't understand. So it took him a time just to understand what's going on here, and then what to speak of examining Prabhupada. And he was a very kind of boisterous type of person, and so he examines Prabhupada, and then you know, with the stethoscope, this, that, and afterwards he goes outside, and so we asked him, so what's wrong? He said, well, I think the old man, he prays too much. So, well, oh yeah, okay. So, he's just praying there. He's just sitting there praying all day, and he's got to get out. He's got to do some exercise. And Prabhupada could hear him from, you know, the other room. Yep, he's got to do something. He's got to exercise. Go for a walk. Got to do something. Go out in the morning. Take a walk. Go to the park. So anyway, and then he just left. And I mean, this guy, that's all he could say. So eventually we did have to I did put Prabhupada in the hospital. And then was a whole thing. And then Prabhupada came out of the hospital. Then we took him to a house in New Jersey we had rented by the seashore. Anyway, then Prabhupada did recover sufficiently, and then Prabhupada announced that now I will take a morning walk. He said that doctor, he said something very good, very valuable. We all laughed because we thought the guy was nut. And he said, Prabhupada said, no, he has given very good instruction. I will take that up. And Prabhupada then proceeded to take a morning walk, and Prabhupada always took that morning walk. I mean, no matter what his condition, what his health was, or whatever. I mean, I know stories of Prabhupada when Prabhupada was in Switzerland and it was snowing out. He was in a hotel. Shamsundar took him to St. Moritz. That's the whole story. But Prabhupada couldn't go outside for his morning walk, so he took his morning walk in the corridors of the hotel, walking, and just as if he was outside. He was just walking and walking. I mean, I know when there was an automobile accident we had in Mauritius, and we were all had been injured, even Prabhupada. The next morning, Prabhupada rang his bell. We were all aching and paining, and Prabhupada, he was injured even more, and on his leg and so on. He rang his bell. Where are you going? Morning walk. And we were like hobbling, and but Prabhupada went on his morning walk. And Prabhupada was also he was much older than we were. because you feel when there's a big tension like that, you feel the next day all that adrenaline. It gives you a lot of pain. So, but Prabhupada went on his morning walk. So Prabhupada followed that instruction.
My wife and I used to run a little store across the street called the Surabi store. And I did get to do a little bit for Srila Prabhupada by making him dobs for his afternoon refreshment when he woke up. So the last year that Srila Prabhupada was here with us in Los Angeles, GBC came to another devotee and I named Bhaskara and asked us if we would like the devotional service of being Srila Prabhupada's bodyguard. They had used us a lot in the past for taking sums of money to the bank like that. And for 4 or 5 years I had carried a weapon all the time because of the rascals and things that had gone on in New Vrindavan like that. So they knew I was experienced with this, and one boy had done it the year before, tried to do it 24 hours a day. They didn't think that was appropriate. So they asked us if 3 of us would split the 24 hours up. So about the middle of the second week of doing this devotee Bhaskara, he and we were hippies together, we had joined the movement together. All of our service seemed to coincide together. We were sitting having lunch, and he was saying, did you notice Srila Prabhupada, he does the same thing at the same time every day? And I goes, yeah, it's amazing. You can almost set your watch. He goes, well, do you know, someone gave him a brand new pair of slippers the other day. And all he wears them is from his room to the curtain at the temple room, and he takes them off. After class, he puts them on and wears them up and takes them off at his door every day. And I goes, yeah. He goes, well, he says, they're brand new, and I kind of looked at them last night, and I got the model number and the manufacturer's name, and I bought another pair just exactly like them. Well, what are you going to do with them? His feet are not the same size as your feet. And he goes, well, tomorrow morning, he had the morning, I had the evening. He said, tomorrow morning when he goes down for class, he's going to wear his slippers down. I'm going to exchange them for my slippers. And then he'll wear my slippers back upstairs, and I will exchange them again. And I'll have a pair of slippers that Srila Prabhupada wore. Maybe just one time, but Srila Prabhupada will have worn my slippers. So I'm thinking, wow, that's a good idea. I said, so tomorrow I'm going to go out and buy a pair of slippers, and we'll do the same thing the next day. So the next day we do our service, we get together at lunch, and I says, well, did you get your slippers? He goes, yeah. I says, well, I says, where do I go buy mine? He says, you shouldn't do it. And I'm thinking, yeah, you got your slippers. So he says, no, he said, let me tell you what happened. He says, Srila Prabhupada put his slippers on in the morning, and he came downstairs, he took them off at the door at the temple room. I exchanged them. After class, Srila Prabhupada came back out and put his slippers on, my slippers. He wore them upstairs, and he wore them right into his room. He never took them off at the door. I'm going, really? What did you do? And he says, well, I stood there chanting japa thinking, what am I going to do now? He said, I was there, he says, about 5 minutes, and he says, this sannyasi came down, and he says, is your name Bhaskara? And he goes, yes. And he says, Srila Prabhupada has a message for you. He says, he wishes to thank you very much for the new slippers. And you may keep the old slippers. But most importantly, he said it is not nice to play tricks on the spiritual master.
So we're sitting there next to the cooker. At that point, we had just two, those gas Indian burners had 2 flames in the gas bottle, and we would make a bucket of coal fire to do his chapatis, because they would come out better on that. Sat down, had the tiffin with all the spices and all the vegetables. Prabhupada sat down. In the meantime, he just kept casually talking to Bhagaji in Hindi. And so I had the tiffin. He put the spice in, this spice in, that spice in, then this vegetable in, this vegetable in. And he turned, he looked at Bhagaji and he said, so simple, still they cannot do. And then we just sat there, and he was chatting with Bhagaji, and So as he was chatting, Palika was concerned that it was too hot, so she would turn the burner down, and he would, chat, and he'd look, and Prabhupada would turn it back up. Didn't say anything, and chat, and then 3 minutes went by, and Palika would turn it down again, and this happened 3 times, and he turned it down. He goes, "Hari Baba, why are you messing?" So, we kind of just stood back, and then he looked at Bhagaji, and he said, "These 2 burners," he said, "I can make," he said, "in 45 minutes, I can make full prasad for 100 people." Bhagaji looked and said, "Impossible." And Prabhupada said, "I will bet you," and Bhagaji said, "Yeah, khichdi." And Prabhupada said, "No, full prasad in 45 minutes. And they started speaking in Hindi then again. And Bhagaji said, "Impossible." And Prabhupada said, "I will bet you 1 lakh of rupees." And Bhagaji started to laugh, and he said, "Prabhupada, if I win or lose, you will take it anyway." And then he started to laugh, and then he just stood up without another word and said, "It's finished." And then he walked out, and the kind of energy just went right back with him, right out the door. So that was my first time, him coming into the kitchen and cutting up and speaking.
I was cooking the milk sweets for the deities late at night. There was one other devotee, and they were washing the pots, and I was cooking the milk sweets. And Prabhupada hadn't been eating much for a few days. I think he was all sick. And then suddenly Harikesh ran into the kitchen. He said, "Prabhupada wants to eat right now." Like 10 o'clock at night. Very unusual. Something like that. He said he wants khichdi. Khichdi. I mean, he said he wants it before, I think he gave 30 minutes. It must be ready by such and such a time. We put everything down and all together, 3 of us, really try to get it together to get that khichdi ready for Prabhupada. Rushing. And it was like 2 minutes late. Harikesh ran up the stairs, and then about 5 minutes later he came down and he said, "I'm finished." He didn't say nothing, he just said, "I'm finished." Prabhupada said, "You were too late. It's too late." He wanted it by 10:30, it was like maybe 5 minutes late. He said, "Take it." He's teaching many lessons, always be on time. Prabhupada was, generally speaking, very like that, always on time. And we weren't trained like that. We weren't so much, because he was teaching that, don't be late. Everything should be on time.
And in the course of moving the deities, I believe each man, two per deity, I was following. One of them knocked, the curtains were closed, we were behind adjusting the deities, and one of the persons, somehow or another, inadvertently knocked one of these columns with their elbow. And in as fast as an accident happens in an automobile going 70 miles an hour, everything slowed down into slow motion. And I remember watching this column go out with the speed of lightning. Srila Prabhupada moved all of the paraphernalia with his right hand off the bottom granite step, stepped up with his right foot on the first step, his left foot on the second step, grabbed one column, this huge column, the column was at least 6 to 8 inches in diameter, with his right hand, and Radharani's hand with his left hand. And I saw on his brow little beads of perspiration, the first time I had ever seen him perspire. And this was such a chivalrous thing that Srila Prabhupada did that I understood what the rasa of chivalry was. And he had that in protecting Radharani. Well, that's one of one example of Srila Prabhupada exhibiting a very personal rasa with Krishna, actually saving Radharani from disaster and exhibiting superhuman strength and the alacrity of the movement of the mind. It couldn't have been faster.
Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Hite Namani.
We drove to Harvard Divinity School, and Srila Prabhupada gave a brilliant lecture. But, you know, Harvard University, being reputed as the best in the nation, I mean, the students were quite proud of themselves. So at the end of the lecture, when Srila Prabhupada said, "Any questions?" so many hands shot up. So one young man began to say, you know, what is the utility of Krishna consciousness? And he started speaking about the Russian Revolution, you know, that the Russian Revolution actually did some good for the people, but what good will Krishna consciousness do? And of course Srila Prabhupada answered, and he said, well, okay, since the Russian Revolution, are the people in Russia happy? And the boy said, no. And Srila Prabhupada said, then what is the use? And even if things get better for some time, again after some time they will get worse. So what is the use? And he explained the benefit of Krishna consciousness. Then another young man asked, you know, you say we should chant Hare Krishna, repeat Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But couldn't we get the same effect just by repeating numbers, just counting numbers? So Srila Prabhupada replied, yes, you can try counting, and after you're tired of counting, you can try chanting. And everyone laughed. Then someone asked, have you seen God? And Srila Prabhupada said, if I tell you falsely that I've seen God, will you believe me? So at first the boy didn't know what he just heard. And Srila Prabhupada repeated, if I tell you falsely that I have seen God, will you believe me? And the boy said, no. And Srila Prabhupada said, then what is the use of the question? So like one after the other, he was completely defeating all the opponents. And so quickly, you know, without any hesitation, that the students were stunned. I mean, the whole room became hushed. And they realized they were in the presence of a superior personality.
There was a lecture going on. Prabhupada spoke on the 4 classes of men, the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And this was in front of a university crowd, a rowdy crowd of students, particularly in Sweden, where nothing is holy and nothing is sacred. And so as soon as Prabhupada finished, a student stood up right in front and said, of course you think you're a first-class man. Prabhupada lectured first-class, second-class, third-class man, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya. You're thinking you're a first-class man sitting in a sea of followers covered with flowers, sitting on a high, exalted seat. You think you're first class. And I was boiling, just about to pounce on the Prabhupada. If you would have made just a little sign, I would have just ripped this man into shreds. Well, anyway, coming from Germany, we are very expert to deal with these matters. So in any way, I was just ready. My blood was boiling. But it was dead silent in the room. Nobody spoke a word. You know, you could hear a pin falling on the ground. And then Prabhupada said, he was pleading with the man, practically speaking. He said, no, no, no. He said, like this with his hands. He said, no, no, no. I'm not a first-class man. He said, I'm a fifth-class man. And so everybody was shocked. It was dead silent for a little while. And then Prabhupada said, in this deafening silence, he said, because I'm the servant of everyone. And we were just astounded when he said this. And I saw behind us, his lip was quivering, you know. He was deeply, when he spoke it, he knew it was true, that he was a servant of the whole world. And so 2 big tears came behind his spectacles. And that I saw, because I was right there. How he cried when he said this. And it was so clear that he was really the servant of the whole world, that he didn't think much of himself, like we have heard before. And he was so humble, that he had so much Shakti on one side, and on the other side, that he was so humble that he considered himself, in fact, fifth class, the servant of everyone, the person who was supporting everybody, serving everybody, giving to everybody, and not expecting anything in return. I thought it was such a sublime display of such a pure devotee of Krishna. It was very moving, and I will never be able to forget it.
When we were in Prabhupada's room there in Chicago in '74, and this is on the video, but it was a very sweet conversation. And first, Prabhupada thought that my husband was my father's son. And then my father said, no, this is my daughter. I said, oh. He said, do you have any sons? And my father said, no, just daughters, 3 daughters. I said, oh, only daughters. And then Prabhupada told my father the story of Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu. Basically, he was telling my father that he was a demon. But my father really appreciated it. He really enjoyed hearing the story. And my father said, I have my own religion. Is it all right if I visit a temple if I have my own religion? You know, some places of worship, they only want you to come if you really want to participate. Of course, later my father almost became a devotee, but at this point, this was his first time that he met Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, yes. So just like we're in Chicago, so he was very casual that he was like this on a cushion. He said, yes, just like there's so many planes going to Chicago, but they have to know that they're going to Chicago, or else what is the meaning of many planes? He said, so if you know that the purpose of religion is to know God and to love Him, then you can say that there's so many religions. I thought about that for many, many months. How that most religions don't say that their goal is to know God and to love Him. They want to go to heaven, or they want salvation. And then my father asked Prabhupada, he said, well, I'm really coming here just to see my daughter and my son-in-law. Is that okay? You know, same kind of question, that I'm not really coming to see Krishna. And Prabhupada said, yes. Again, he was like this. He said, yes. He said, they are loving Krishna. And I'm thinking, I don't love Krishna. He said, chanting and dancing are symptoms of loving Krishna. So they are loving Krishna, and you are loving them, and 2 things equal to the same thing are equal to each other. That was very sweet. That's one of the things that Prabhupada said that's really sustained me over the years. I thought Prabhupada saw at least the potential that I'm loving Krishna. So if Prabhupada said I'm loving Krishna, someday I'll love Krishna. And it also really guided me in my relationships with my family, especially at the last days of my mother's life, when I was thinking, if I can just get my mother attached to me, and then gradually move that into an attachment to Krishna. And my father also asked at that time, he said, why are you so anxious to give everyone your food, even if they don't know anything about your philosophy? And Prabhupada said, do you believe in infection? And my father said, yes. And Prabhupada said, just like if you eat the food of a sick person, you'll be infected with their disease. And in the same way, if you eat the food that Krishna's eaten, you'll be infected with Krishna's disease. So that was really wonderful. And when we walked out of the room, my father looked at me. He said, now I understand why you've joined this movement. This is a genuine holy man. So that was very nice.
Prabhupada did two public programs, as far as I remember. On one program, my father confronted him. He was angry at Prabhupada for having stolen his sons. He said, I cannot believe that it is responsible to bring a foreign culture into, that is the Indian culture, into Germany. It will not survive. The people who are now with you will not be able to stay. It's almost like taking a crocodile from Egypt and transplanting it in the cold River Rhine. How will the crocodile survive there? It's irresponsible. Prabhupada took up the challenge. He looked at my father. He must have understood it's the father of one of his disciples. And he said, you can become Krishna conscious in suit and tie. My father understood. He understood Krishna consciousness is not a matter of culture. The dress may change according to culture. But no, you didn't have to dress in an Indian way. You didn't have to accept the externals to become Krishna conscious. And to this day, he remembers this. At the first moment, he was thinking, oh, this is too simple of an answer for my very intellectual challenge. But the words of the pure devotee do not necessarily act on the intellectual or mental platform on which the question was posed. They have a Shakti, a transformative Shakti, which works much deeper. And my father thought, what a pleasant encounter. The Germans are used to tough discussions, and he was very much, yes, he thought, my son is in good hands. This is a very sensible personality. And I was very, very grateful to Srila Prabhupada for having solved a difficult family issue.
When we first arrived in Mayapur, it was the days of the brick hut with the thatched roof and the water pump and the mud everywhere. And we arrived like that. And Srila Prabhupada was staying in the brick hut, and Shamsundar was the secretary, and myself, I was the cook. And I have to speak a little bit about the situation to sort of let you understand, you know, the mood that was there for me, which was I always wanted to be as cook like this. And so Krishna had rewarded me. Govinda Das and Gaur Sundar, they were my early ideals, you know, like the family that was engaged in the service of the Guru. So now here it was, and somehow my husband and myself were engaged in the service of the Guru. And this time in Mayapur, I was faced with not only service of Guru, but service of husband, service of daughter, and trying to maintain my sanity in a situation that was materially impossible. There was no facilities. I was living in a tent. I had 2 buckets to cook with, and the servant would come every day and grab one of the buckets right before the meal was ended to heat the water for Prabhupada's bath. Like, we never thought, you know, I didn't even think, well, why don't you go get yourself a bucket, you know? Prabhupada's servant wanted the bucket. Oh, yes. But then I was like left holding the one bucket, really needing, you know, for chapatis, and also it was like, that was one aspect. But the real thing was, I'd start out the day having to confront the treasurer.
Now, the duty of a treasurer is not to give money out. It's to hold on to every paisa, no matter what, or no matter who. So I would usually have a rather royal argument with the treasurer concerning funds for Srila Prabhupada's Bhoga. Then I'd collect my daughter and go out and have an argument with the rickshawwala who was going to take me to the boat, where I had another argument concerning the money, because you see, being white, they expected at least 10 times the amount, but the treasurer was only going to give us what the locals paid, no matter what. And he wouldn't pay for my daughter, and they wanted my daughter to pay, no matter what. And this caused a bitter argument every single day. So then I finished that fight. On the other, it used to be when you get off the boat at the other side, there was a guy that you'd have to pay a tax in order to walk up the bank. So there was another argument. Then another fight with the rickshawwalas who were going to take you to the sabji market and to fight with everybody there who you had to deal with, and then do it all over again to go back to get to the other side. So by the time I get back there, I would just be, and trying to, hold on to my kid and, keep her happy, and then start cooking. And then have the servant come and take away the stove just before lunch so that, to double my anxiety, which was already at peak level. So I started thinking, actually, what am I doing, And on top of that, every day I'm thinking, how can I please Srila Prabhupada? And I was really thinking like this. I really wanted to cook perfectly for him. So I'd always be thinking about it all day. I mean, even when I wasn't cooking, after I'd cooked, I'd be thinking already for the next day, how can I do it perfectly? And then it seemed like every single day he was telling me something that I was doing imperfectly. So I can remember that one day there was too much salt. We'd always put salt, pepper, and nimbu. So one day there was too much salt, so then the next day I took less, but then there was too little. And I was thinking, I can't get it right. I can't do it right. Everything I do is wrong. Actually, maybe I shouldn't even be cooking. And the minute that idea went in my mind, I started feeling, yeah, actually, someone else should be cooking. And I was thinking, yeah, I'll just go tell Prabhupada to get someone else, or I'll get someone else who can be better than me at it. And I started actually feeling better. I was thinking, the problem's almost solved. All I have to do is tell Prabhupada, and that's it. So the next day I go in there, full of this idea. And the thing was, I'd heard his godbrothers were coming for lunch. And that was another thing. Prabhupada was getting criticized for having a female cook. I was a cook, and therefore I felt badly about that too. I mean, there was other criticisms. That was just one of them. So I'm gonna, I find out his godbrothers are coming for lunch. So I think, well, he certainly won't have me cook today, so I'll tell him tomorrow. But he calls me in the room and he starts to tell me what he wants for lunch. So I couldn't very well say, well, Srila Prabhupada, not today, because, everything's in motion. So, okay, I go out and I make the lunch. And I come to bring it in, and I look, he's in the front part of the room, and I'm looking in, and there he is at the end like a royal king, and on each side are, a row of old stately Vaishnavas with dandas, and it was an impressive sight. But I felt completely intimidated. So what I did, because I had to go in there, is I took my sari and I put it over my head like this. And then I covered my hands, and I got down on the floor on my hands and knees, and I had the plate. So the only thing was the plate, and I crawled in with just the plate. And I put it down, and then I was making my obeisances, and I started slithering back out. And I heard Srila Prabhupada say, yes, she cooks for me, and all I do is criticize her. But she would slit her throat for me, and I would do the same for her. And when he said that, I completely disintegrated. By the time I got to the other door, I was so covered up with my sorrow. I was just completely wet with tears, because I realized at that point how mundane my whole consciousness had been, and how my whole dealings with this whole issue had been based upon, a misunderstanding of the relationship between the guru and the disciple. And in fact, every day I was thinking, I want to do it perfect. How can I do it perfect? What do you want? And he was telling me. He wasn't criticizing me. I was just taking it in that very mundane manner. But because I wanted to know how it could be more pleasing to him, he told me that I was in such an illusion as to the position of a disciple and what the relationship was, you know, of servitude meant you pat me on my back, you know, that, you know, my misconception. And when I heard that, I realized actually it was true. There was no doubt about it. It was absolutely true. My mood was like that, and I would have done anything. But it had never occurred to me actually how Prabhupada would do anything for us. And then I realized he already was doing everything for us. And so my insignificance at that point was immense. But my gratitude and my, you know, love for him was certainly, or the potential for that love was certainly revealed at that point.
Hare Krishna devotees, Ram. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, and to his disciples for sharing the wonderful memories and qualities of Srila Prabhupada. So, devotees, may please unmute your mic and share your reflections or comments. I think we can take 1 or 2 comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much for the audio, Prabhu. It's really fantastic. And it's not only about Srila Prabhupada Prabhu, it's also about their disciples, how dedicated they are to their master Prabhu. If we get even a fraction of their dedication and faith, I think my life will be done, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna Dandavat.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for that heartful reflection. Any other comments or reflections?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Dandavat.
Yeah, for me, the takeaway is the food thing. The Mataji told that his father was asking, like, what could be the thing? Like, you have you eat the food, you get infected with the Krishna's love. That was a highlight for me, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you very much, Mataji. Thank you for sharing the reflection. Okay, Hare Krishna devotees, in the interest of time, we will end today's session with Vaishnava Pranam. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhu bhyayevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo. Antakoti Vaishnavanda ki jai. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to Sri Vaishnava. Hare Krishna devotees, I'll end the Doom session. Take over Prema.